Why, hello everybody, it's Histor-Tea time! Hot. Hello, welcome back to Histor-Tea time with your favorite historian, Miss Mullins. Okay, so today we're going to go over France's surrender and a little bit of Hitler's psyche. Goodness, I'm going to make it through this. A lot of liquid of caffeine. Okay, so some terms that I'm going to need you to know. Wehrmacht, which is German army. That's all it is. So this is going to go into frame. Now I'm just kind of giving you a frame here of what's going on in Europe. And essentially this is what leads up to the Battle of Britain. To set the stage for you, Germany has taken Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark, and certainly Poland at this point. And he's moving into France, okay? Now with him, he does have, not with him personally, but as far as his field marshals go, he has one called Manstein, and he's technically a very good field general, but he's also bad, right? Because he's Nazi, and he plays a huge part in the surrender of France because he's the reason why a lot of them are moved. He's the reason why the Germans encroach on the French territory so fast. Now, what was interesting about this is that the Wehrmacht was prescribed Pervetten, or Pervetten, I don't know how to pronounce it totally in the German pronunciation, but that's how it's spelled. And essentially it's meth, okay? Drugs can affect history, children, but don't do them. Now, meth made these German troops incredibly incapable of feeling empathy, they felt invincible, and they were essentially unyielding super soldiers. Pervitin was so powerful that the Wehrmacht didn't need to sleep like the other troops did. And they were able to stay awake for about 3 days and 3 nights straight through, sometimes even more. Now, there were a lot of side effects to taking the Pervitin, but it didn't matter because the results were astounding. So they were shipping pounds of Pervitin, which is meth, right? Because in Germany, they actually prescribed meth as like an upper, essentially, when you were getting too tired or too bogged down, depressed, whatever, they would give you meth. Like the pharmacies just give out meth. Anyway, now France expected Germany to actually take about 2 to 3 weeks to actually get into their territory, so they took their time preparing. But the Germans were slaughtering the French troops, and then they also slaughtered the British Expeditionary Force. They forced them out into the beaches of Dunkirk. Now, I'll talk about Dunkirk in another video, but I'll talk about it a little bit here too. So, they drove through the northern territories and then took Paris in 3 days. 3 days. They took the Dutch territory of Rotterdam in 4 days. Yeah, meth really made a difference. So the French leader at the time was Renault, and he calls Churchill when they start moving into French territory, and he goes, listen, I think we're about to lose. And Churchill in May, he arrives and flies to Paris and actually tries to motivate the French army to keep fighting. Now, the German guy that I was telling you about, Erich von Manstein, he's a German general leading the intense German attacks on France, thus causing Dunkirk. Now, Dunkirk is when, like I said before, the British troops were literally chased out of France into the beaches and into the water. The miracle part of Dunkirk, which is what it's been called now, is because of the rescue. Churchill had to somehow coordinate a massive rescue for these troops, but again, I'll go into that later. Manstein technically disobeyed orders from Hitler, but because he gained the victory of Paris all over in France, it caused this massive surrender. So for a little while, Manstein was actually able to do his thing, and Hitler didn't do anything about it. However, when he communicated to the Luftwaffe commander Hermann Göring that he could keep pushing and take more territory to take Allied soldiers' lives, Manstein technically was the one that disobeyed the initial orders. Hitler orders the teams to completely stop then after that. When he sees that Manstein is ignoring Hitler's orders to stop, he kind of just goes, well, wait a minute. I can take all this territory. We can do it. Here, soldiers, pop some meth real quick, and we're gonna go in and we're gonna storm France. And they do. But before they can move any further, Hitler tells them to stop. And the rest of the operation was to be solely fielded by the Luftwaffe. This was done to show that only Hitler was the supreme war commander. So what this does, now Göring, another SS officer, he was very, very influential, probably one of the top in command next to Hitler. The Luftwaffe is the German Air Force, essentially. And the German Air Force was very powerful. They really did control the skies for a long time. And he tells him to kind of pick up where Manstein left off. And Manstein's kind of upset. He's just like, well, wait, why are we stopping? Like, we can roll in. And technically, this costs Germans time, men, and resources, but the purpose of this maneuver was to display Hitler's authority. And even though Manstein's disobedient decision was actually pretty successful, it wasn't Hitler's decision. Therefore, not valid. If it's not from the Führer, it's not going to happen. So, Göring wanted the overall victory of defeating the Allied forces to be given to the Luftwaffe, not the Wehrmacht. And Göring constantly flaunted the Luftwaffe's abilities, and he considered them to be the most superior air force in the skies. And like I said, for a time, they were. However, Göring decided that to finish the mission, he told Hitler with complete cocky confidence that the Luftwaffe could totally slaughter the Allied forces at Dunkirk. One thing to keep in mind, the Luftwaffe heavily relied on clear weather. Now at Dunkirk, there was a severe cloud cover, and the Luftwaffe couldn't effectively dive bomb to destroy the Allied forces, thus giving them time to get out and be rescued. When closely examined, now here's the thing, not just Hitler's psyche, but the Nazi psyche in general. Get ready for some Histor-Tea time. The German military mistakes were often made because they underestimated their opponents and overestimated their own forces. So many people say that Hitler is this, like, brilliant military genius, but he's just evil. No. Militarily speaking, he made a lot of stupid decisions. His own generals figured it out, that he was making bad decisions and costing them a lot of time, money, and lives. And they actually tried to kill him a couple times. Yeah. I'll get into that when we get to the Battle of the Bulge. No one could technically combat the Luftwaffe until the Royal Air Force developed the Spitfire. This aircraft was faster and more easily maneuvered and very, very capable of shooting down the Luftwaffe aircrafts. And this actually proved to be the key factor in the successful rescue at Dunkirk. They were able to take care of the Luftwaffe and keep them off the soldiers' backs, essentially, while they were rescued by the ships that were waiting for them out in the water. Göring was obviously humiliated, and Hitler ignores the Luftwaffe for a little bit, and he decides to focus his infantry and then his panzer divisions to take Paris. Now, the French did not want their city to be destroyed, so the government moved south and then declared Paris an open city. So I want that to sink in. That was a lot of verbiage, but essentially what that is, what all of that just said. France realized that it had places like Notre Dame and all these amazing architectural jewels and historical sites that were hundreds of years old. They didn't want destroyed. So they said, that's fine. The government left the citizens of Paris. When it says that the government moved south, that doesn't mean the people of Paris moved south. It's just the government officials. They were left to die. The citizens were. The citizens were left to be whatever the Germans wanted them to be. A lot of them were forced to, work in labor forces. Some of them were forced to enlist in the German military. It's insane, but regardless, the government left them behind. Okay? June 14th, Renault is no longer in power, and a World War I hero, Marshal Philippe Pétain, is convinced that France can no longer fight in the war against Germany, and he decides to surrender. Now, Churchill initially talked to Renault. He was working with him very well. Pétain is not, he's like, France isn't gonna win. Like, we got nothing, We were trying to prepare, and then y'all rolled up in 3 days instead of 3 weeks, and it was just terrible. So he surrenders. Now, the surrender was not to be done in private. The goal was to utterly humiliate France. Again, this is all part of Hitler's psyche. Why is this? Now, because the Treaty of Versailles, which is what ended World War I, was signed on French ground, and this was the moment when World War I and World War II kind of blended. Because when Germany took Paris, they took France, this was the moment where World War I, the ending of it, and all of the humiliation that Germany suffered was finally vindicated. It was finally redeemed, because he now took this exact same territory and claimed it for Germany. Hitler was redeeming their reputation, and he ordered that the exact same rail car that they all signed in World War I to end it, okay, he brought it out of the museum and had it taken to the exact same location in Compiègne, where the Germans surrendered in World War I. He had it taken there, exactly there, okay? So he ordered the railway car to be exhumed from the museum, transported to Compiègne, which is a location in France where the Germans surrendered in World War I. And then they signed it. Okay, they signed. Well, the French surrendered, and that's what they were writing out, the little, I guess, treaty, if you will. But I guess all the terms and conditions of the surrender for France. And then after returning the railway car to the museum, and when Hitler got back to Germany, he ordered the area of Compiègne to be destroyed. So not only is he like putting his own foot down on top of this territory that had such horrible memories, he's trying to sandwich it with good memories, and then he just obliterates it, completely annihilates the area. So it's like everything is just gone. There's nothing left. There's no scars left of that humiliation for Germany. So I'm going to play this YouTube link for you. This is actually footage of the surrender. It's pretty amazing. That's the railway car that was brought out of the museum. And that's Hitler. That's the French Marshal Pétain. That's Goring right there, that guy. And so he's leaving. Because this isn't mine, I'm gonna have to skip it. So, this is the car being taken away. And again, essentially, France was humiliated and it was paraded all over the place. Just how Germany was humiliated in World War I. Now, with the surrender of France, this leaves Britain alone to fight in World War II. Britain is going to have to fight all of the Nazi military empire by itself. I don't know if you've ever seen a map of Britain, but it's just a little collection of islands sitting in the Atlantic Ocean. It's not a lot, but somehow they managed to hold out. But again, the surrender of France is what ignites the Battle of Britain. So, hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll see you again for more Histor-Tea time.